Welcome and thank you for watching this video. This is the first of a few videos I want to do in English, and in this video I'll show you how I painted a sparrowhawk. I noticed this bird recently perched on the rooftop on the other side of the street, and it piqued my curiosity because sparrowhawks, or any bird of prey, are not exactly very common in the middle of town where I live. But in the winter time, apparently, you get to see them every now and then. And I've sketched this out in my nature journal on a page that is dedicated to birds of prey. And just felt, because it was such a wonderful occurrence to see this bird, the entire family was excited about seeing this bird on the rooftop above, that I just wanted to give it a full painting. And I'm beginning to draw the contours with a mechanical pencil. I have a 2B lead in the pencil, so my line is quite dark without, however, leaving a deep indentation on the paper. That's what I really like about working with a soft graphite pencil. You easily get a dark enough line for painting later on, and also for filming. And I'm working on a laminated block of arches paper, 300 grams. This is the fine grain. It's a paper that I really like to work on. It's not ideal for drawing, but you can draw on it well enough. And for drawing for watercolor painting, I just need to lay out the shapes, basically. And here, I did find the beak a little bit unusual. I haven't drawn many beaks of birds of prey, so here I'm already correcting a little bit. I would normally use a netted eraser, those soft erasers for taking off graphite lines, but I just didn't have it to hand in this instance. And it's important in this early stage of the process to really get the shapes right. So that's why I'm focusing quite strongly on how it's all laid out in this very important area of the beak, because the beak to me seems to really spell out this is a bird that intends to eat other birds. You know, it really wants to tear birds apart with that beak. So it really needed to be right. And with this very nice and soft pencil, I can also lay in the darks quite well. And I try to do that a little bit as a memory support for myself. This needs to be a dark area, but also to aid with the final painting. It does help if there are some darker pencil lines there already. Yeah, but I do think quite closely about what do I actually need to put in here. How much does this drawing still need? And it definitely does not need every little spot of brown in the plumage, which is why I proceeded to laying in the color. So I've started with the wing. The wing in the front gets quite a few layers. That was pretty clear to me, so that's why I started. The one in the back, because it recedes, it is further away, and it also seems to have a shadow on it. I just put a light wash of ultramarine blue on it, whereas the wing in the front has burnt sienna and really lightly applied, just to give it some basic local color. And now I'm working on the beak. This is a mix of ultramarine blue and burnt sienna, so it's a nice neutral gray, and it's not very dark because there are some highlights on the beak, and I want to work those out even on top of this initial wash. So even though it looks very dark now, it will dry up quite nicely to be a little bit brighter. And since I have this grayish mix on my palette now, I can just put it in elsewhere. The choice of brush here is a little bit unusual. I'm working with a travel brush, and this is not for want of other brushes, which I do have nearby. It's just come because I work on the road quite a bit, and with my sketchbook sitting in the car, I've just come to prefer this brush quite a bit. So that's why I'm using it, even though I'm at home in a comfortable, relaxed setting. And because this brush is so small, I'm working really slow here. So I'm deliberately relaxed in the way that I approach this painting, which was nice for a change, you know. But I did make time for this, and I just dawdled along with it. And the more time you can give yourself for working on a painting, the more mindful you can be of the changes that you are seeing on the paper. And then you can react to that before you've hurried on to do something that you can't undo. So you see on top of, above the beak where that nostril is, I've put in just a light little area of yellow. And I've also already put a first layer on the eye, and I'm beginning to address the plumage now. Feathers and plumage on birds is a great mystery to me. It's an area that I have a strong desire to get better in, and my bird paintings and also other animal paintings are kind of in this context in this year. I do realize that they often turn out nice, but I'm all along wondering how things ought to be done in the best way. And this fluffiness and the softness of plumage and fur is just really, really mesmerizing, and at the same time very challenging. So in that sense, working around the eye as I'm doing here is, quite a bit easier. And I love I love eyes on birds and animals, but on birds of prey in particular, they look so fierce. They always look so fierce. And it's also important to put the eye in quite early, I believe, because the moment the eye is there, the animal comes alive. It doesn't exactly jump off the page, not just yet, but you're not just dealing with shapes and lines anymore either. So that's why it psychologically it sometimes really helps to put the eye in quite early on. Yeah, so this is what I said about plumage and how to make it quite soft and not to overdo it. I'm experimenting here with really light washes, so I've got different shades of brown and gray and brownish gray, and I'm just diluting it quite a lot and applying really small strokes and trying not to be too deliberate with how I place them, to be kind of loose and at the same time not to be careless. That's a bit of a tightrope there. And even though I really like working with a larger brush, I have the feeling that with this particular brush, it has such a nice fine point that it really allows me to suggest small details without getting too fiddly. Because the last thing I want to do is draw out every single bit of feather that I can see with the paintbrush. Instead, I want to continue working on the eye. So here I'm putting in the iris, and it's a little bit oval. This is something that I notice later on, and then I'll make it a bit more round. I really like the idea of having a lost and found edge on the sparrowhawk here on the left side, but it simply doesn't work with a white background, because you know, it's not a lost and found edge, it's just a lost edge. So I'm putting in some Perylene green for contrast, just to bring out that contour quite nicely. And I have no intention of putting in a full background, so I'm just letting it fade out with a lot of clean water. And the paper I know will work with me here. Arches is a very high quality paper, and even if I had a little bit too much water on the surface, which I probably do, the paper is very forgiving and just always works nicely with me. We have a pretty good relationship. Yeah. At this point of the painting, in hindsight, I have to say it looks a little bit dull, and I'm quite glad I didn't notice that whilst I was working on it, because it can be a little bit disheartening sometimes to find that the painting doesn't you know, when you're looking at it in the ugly stage, it's like, oh man, is it ever going to come about? Is this going to work out? And it's good if you just keep on working. So I kept working on the wing on the right side of the bird, and I'm now beginning to address the front wing, which is a bit of a challenge to me, because like I said, I haven't painted a lot of plumage and feathers so far, and I wasn't sure how I should do it. There is a clear contrast between a lighter brown and a darker brown, and those areas, however, I failed to really identify a distinct pattern in the upper part of the wing that I'm working on right now. And so I just put in areas of a darker brown, which I mixed with burnt sienna and ultramarine blue. And only towards the lower regions of the wing was there a pattern that I could make out, which I'm now trying to render. A little bit like scales on fish, you know, with one segment overlapping the other, but only partially. And of course, the softness of the softness doesn't render at all. So that didn't go so well. So this was the first attempt, which I then sprayed down with water and left it to dry. You can see the water bottle there on the left side. And whilst this is very, very wet, I continued working elsewhere. Fortunately, there were enough dry areas to work on, and where I'm applying paint now is a bit moist from all the spraying, so that's nice. This will give me blurry edges and that softness that I'm after. And generally, whenever you want a blurry edge, you kind of want to work wet into wet. Or you can also work wet on dry and immediately afterwards apply water with the brush or with the spray bottle like I did here. But wet into wet is a nice way to render gradients and soft edges. And what I'm doing here is actually quite interesting, even though I know I'm not going to keep this. I'm applying the paint with the side of the brush, which is similar to dry brushing. It just means that you can't control the exact way in which the paint lands on the paper, and it opens you up for serendipity and really interesting textures. But I didn't continue with that. And since I still have to wait for the wing to dry, I'm just working on other areas of the sparrowhawk that are dry. This sparrowhawk, by the way, if you've ever seen one and you've noticed orange spots and on the cheeks or near the wing, this one doesn't have those spots because it's a female. The females are white, the males have the orange areas. Females are also 25% larger than the males. Can you believe it? It's quite rare in the animal kingdom that this happens. So several things happened. I started rendering the plumage on the breast, and I've also decided that I would work wet into wet on the wing. This is, if you will, my second attempt. But since it's already building on a darker value of the brown on the wing, it's hasn't been a mistake that I did what I did before. And I think you can see immediately that the fact that the watercolor can now bleed out into the surrounding areas really helps in creating this the softness of feathers. This impression that we're dealing with something organic here. It's not made of plastic. It's actually really just organic material, plumage. And the search for rendering natural textures and fibers is just ongoing for me, and I find it endlessly fascinating, really. And I'm really glad I struck on this way of doing the wing. In some areas the paint that I'm applying here bleeds out a lot, and in others not so much. And this irregularity, that's precisely what nature gives you, right? You don't have a formula that is put into practice in exactly the same way everywhere. In nature, it always varies. And yet I do want to keep that light edge there. There's a thickness to the wing that is rendered by that bright edge that I'm working out very well here. Maybe a little bit too well, now that I think about it. But as long as the wing seems to have a thickness to it, I'm quite happy. I'm usually not a perfectionist with my paintings. There are certain things that I like to be done well. Oh, look at this texture. And I think I'm going to take it, yeah, there it's gone. Yeah. So this is a really interesting example of how much it would help if you could just pause a moment and see it, look at what you've been doing and say like, ooh, I like it, I'm going to keep it. But often we just work, continue working and don't even notice. Yeah, so I'm applying a darker, what is it? I think it's Delft blue and neutral tint, just a darker wash to accentuate the light that hits the sparrowhawk from above. Yeah, I was gonna say that some areas really need to be worked out well in a painting, but like I really like for the eye to be done well, to be rendered with a little bit more detail, and the beak. But I'm not a fan of hyperrealism, and I would therefore choose the areas where I'm attentive and careful, quite deliberately. It really should only be 2, maximum 3. Otherwise, also the viewer gets confused. There's just too much to look at. And with this busy bird, with all the plumage in the different areas, I really didn't want to put in a background precisely for this reason, so that the whole painting doesn't get too busy. I wanted the background to be deliberately calm for the bird to do all the drama. And I think he's doing it really well. Oh, wait, she's doing it really well. She is getting a round iris now. And the last few minutes I'm working on the eye. That's really important. So there's the cast shadow from the eyebrow, and there are a few more highlights in the eye. They're not all completely white. So for the iris, I was able to use a white watercolor pencil, but I need to use gouache for the highlight. And the yellowish, greenish area. And here's a pigment marker for the iris. So yeah, this is the sparrowhawk lady. I hope you liked the video. Do come back. There will be more of this kind in future, because I really enjoyed making it, and I appreciate the time and maybe also comments that you might leave. Thank you, and see you again later.